what I suggest to clients now, I mean, it's only the 9th of November, you can still finalize an eviction this year. So if you're sitting with that eviction and you're like, oh, do I start? Do I not start? Now is the time to start. We still have about a good 2 weeks to commence evictions and still obtain the orders this year. But because I see, I was shown yesterday, I heard one of my attorneys on the phone with a client, and the client's massively upset with how long this eviction is taking. And but we're only sitting down for ex parte this week. So we only commenced, in other words, earlier this week. So it's silly. And Hashem, I heard him talk to the client, and he said, but remember, you took more than a year to commence this eviction. So yes, I understand your arrears are massively high. We only got the instruction like a week ago. So we're actually moving quite fast here. But the reason why it's taking so long is you took very long to start the eviction. And I think that's something I've been seeing lately. And I've been hearing from the estate agents that I work with. The clients get so frustrated, the landlords get frustrated with how long an eviction takes. But it took them more than, 3, 4, 5 months, sometimes a year, to commence the eviction. And it's really not that scary, because if you have a deposit, which landlords, please, you should keep those deposits in interest-bearing accounts. On cancellation, that deposit becomes available for anything that's due in terms of the lease agreement, which definitely includes rent. And you can most definitely take that money then to commence an eviction if there's outstanding rent. There's not even a dispute on this. So it's not using deposit money for legal costs, it's using it for rent, which you're allowed to in terms of the Rental Housing Act. And then you just, instead of buying something pretty with your rental income, you're evicting the tenant, which is very much allowed. So I think tenants are, well, landlords are being told that evictions are expensive and they take long. And that's not really the case. I mean, if you can use the deposit money on cancellation, it shouldn't actually be such an expensive process, and it really shouldn't be long. I mean, 6 to 8 weeks, you should have your order. Unless something weird happens, and I'm obviously not talking about sell and execution.
Depending on the court and stuff like that. And I do agree with you, and it's quite funny because I always tell people this, and they don't realize when they come in and they ask for a quotation, and you start discussing a cost with them. And the one time I just went extreme, I think I was just tired of answering the question. Because everyone asks the quote and you go for like, that middle piece where it's like, oh, unopposed eviction could cost this, but could cost this, and we don't know what the sheriff's going to charge. And I literally at this point, I was like, you know what? I've done an eviction for 1,000 Rand. I've done an eviction for 500,000 Rand, right? The answer from me is what? Does it fall squarely in the middle? No, it falls to odds. So what odds are we looking at? Where in the scale of 1 to 500,000 do you fall? I don't know, because if I'd known this, I'd be a fortune teller. What I can tell you is it looks like this and then starts going down again. So a lot of people fit within this one. So sorry, you're looking left to right, so I should
don't worry, anyway, I don't understand these things. I have a female brain, so whether it's left or right, my brain is just like, don't really understand what you're doing. I'm just nodding.
So it's a graph. I'm trying to draw a graph. So here's the axis.
I feel you.
So this is length of time versus amount of people, or how quickly the eviction goes. So somewhere here in this curve is where generally people fall. And you find that a huge amount of people, for example, will move out after the application is issued. Or letter of demand. So as soon as letter of demand is sent, your chances start going up. As soon as the application is issued, your chances start going up. So somewhere here, you get a huge percentage. And then you've got the top of the curve, which is now where you start dealing with actually having to go to court appearance, and starts fighting and becomes opposed. So you're sitting over here. So the cost of an eviction could very well, on average, take 10,000, 12,000.
Exactly.
Because you're not actually going to court. So it's like, take the step, send the letter, get the attorney, because what I'm finding now with a lot of people is cheap alternatives don't have the same effect and then they sit 6 months down the line, not having collected rent, and it's cost them more. You could have done 3 evictions sometimes.
And even more. Now you've done all the creative things, you've spent money on that. And every time the tenant is successful batting those illegal actions off, to move somebody in, to disconnect power, whatever, every single time the tenant feels like he had a win, it delays the eviction. But also, I can promise you, and I think from both our firms we can draw stats on this one, the effect of a landlord doing illegal actions, or an estate agent on behalf of a landlord, illegal alternative ways, and then actually once you then commence the eviction legally, the tenant's not going to get his crack because he's been successful in batting these illegal actions off. So when the actual legal thing comes, he's like, Tommy, I know what to do here. And I find that those creative eviction things prior to commencing a legal eviction tends to lead to evictions being opposed more, in contrast to a tenant. The first thing he sees is cancellation letter day or so after that. Sheriff rocks up with an eviction application with a court date on, and the tenant realized, well, cook, this is legal. I should probably make a plan to get out. And that's my experience every single day of the week. You too, hey?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, it makes things worse. It builds up the psychological momentum. It builds up this arrogance, and it builds up this animosity. And you land up fighting with the tenant that's fighting you for the sake of fighting. And it's exactly that. I mean, it almost feels like like a divorce. If people chose not to date, they're not going to fight with each other. They're like, we need to walk away. But if people are together for a certain period of time and they start doing things to each other, by the end of it, it's nothing. It's not about a rational like separation anymore. Now it's about, but I need to get out more. I need to win. I need to do things like that. Psychologically, you're now engaging with the tenant on different terms. No attorney, then it doesn't matter what your legal rights are. You've psychologically damaged that relationship, and now the rational doesn't matter anymore. It's out the window.
Exactly. It's like trying to get a peaceful divorce done after somebody posted something on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not.
Well,